first time I'm there, I had the full hardiness to stand here on the last night of the summer school and attempt to recite memorata a passage of Latin verse.
65 years ago, so
Was in
quickly.
fact it was in fact not 1887, it was but 1987, as you well remember. Wilfred O'Neill was the director. Indeed, he was in fact the association president at that time. And we had a very good time. I think the obvious proof of it is that had I not enjoyed it, I would not be standing here this evening. We had all the usual things. The lectures, which were great, the option groups, visits to different places in York, where the summer school actually was. In many ways, very similar to what we've had this week. But the atmosphere was rather different insofar as we all felt rather under siege. There was a rather nasty, so we felt, education secretary. His name was Mr. Kenneth Baker. He thought he knew a lot about Latin and classics, but we weren't quite so sure. On one occasion he said "sail away" singular when 6 classicists went into his office for a meeting. He produced a red book, which to us was almost as infamous as the little red book produced by a certain Chinese leader some years previously. And he also produced a very rigorous and restrictive national curriculum for every school in the country, which excluded Latin. Feelings were running reasonably high. I thought that come the last night we might create a great effigy, and rather like on Guy Fawkes night, and set fire to it, with great cheers and jubilation. But I'm glad to say it didn't quite come to that. However, around the middle of the summer school, we had a visitation from a certain lecturer from Newcastle University. I think it may well have been the Wednesday when he came, actually, but it was around the middle of the week, certainly. In his mid-40s, very good looking. He'd already made quite a name for himself in the classical world through Ice Demander, for example, and in various other ways. I think he was already known to readers of the Daily Telegraph, even by then. Yeah. He also gave us quite a bit of guidance and encouragement as to how we might deal with the aforementioned dreaded Mr. Baker, in the way of perhaps writing letters, making our views known, agitating, and generally he encouraged us to think that per varios casus per tot discrimina rerum, Latin and classics might survive for another 20 years or so. So we left the summer school not quite as downhearted as we might have been. I'm not sure whether he was wearing glasses or not, but certainly not in quite the slightly donnish way that he does now. I think, Alison, I would say that I will coin a phrase, not in Latin, not in Greek, not in Spanish, not even in Italian. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. On the last night of the summer school, there were a number of distinguished people present, including the then Professor of Classics at Newcastle University. He had already published on Lucretius. He was an expert on Horace as well, on Ovid's influence on Shakespeare. and is best known, I'm sure, to all of you as an excellent translator of the Aeneid. And after the summer school's over, he was kind enough to send me a note of encouragement, which meant a great deal to me at the time, and I think tells us something of his own character, warmth, friendliness, and constant willingness to help younger teachers. We have lost, as you know, this year, two splendid, heroic men, both some of the friendliest and warmest people I've known in classics or indeed at all. Both men extremely hard-working for the cause of classics everywhere, and both, of course, staunch friends of this association in Wilf O'Neill and David West.
Yeah.
So I decided that tonight I would like to dedicate the recitation, which I hope to give, to the beloved memory of these two great men. And I'm quite sure, as our President said earlier, that in spirit they are with us and looking down on us benignly this evening. In Book 6 of the Aeneid, Virgil, accompanied by the Sibyl, goes down into the underworld.
I think that's Dante.
The primary purpose being to visit his own father, Anchises. On the way, they enter a region which is a kind of limbo, a region of the underworld specially reserved for people who had died prematurely, died before their time.
Yeah.
We meet infants, suicides, people unjustly condemned, but these are all quite briefly described. We then meet a series of traditional heroines from classical mythology, but they also don't make any great emotional impact. Really, they form a kind of crowd scene, preparatory for the appearance of the most tragic figure of the entire Aeneid, which is Dido. Aeneas attempts to explain his conduct and his reasons for sacrificing his personal feelings of love for her, just as he had in Book 4. But this time, he is pleading, while she is not listening. Echoes of Book 4 in his speech increase the feeling of tragic irony. And when Dido finally rejects him, he is still looking back, tormented with guilt and remorse for the sorrows of the past, not yet turning to a new future. He has to learn the hard lesson that he has caused Dido's death, that her ghost is implacably hostile to him, and that there is nothing he can now do about what has happened, except to leave the past behind. Inter quas poenissa recens a vulnere Dido errare silva in magna qua Troius heros ut primum juxta stecce anno vitque per umbras obscura qualem primo qui surgere mensa aut videt aut vidisse puta per nubila luna de misit lacrimas dulciquat fatus amores in felix Dido Venus mihi nuntius ergo veneret extincta ferro extrema secuta funes her tibi causa fui per sidere ioro per superos et si qua fides tellore sub imast invitus regina tuo de litore cessi sed me iussa Dei quae nunc has ere per umbras per loca senta situ cogunt, noctenque profundam imperiis egere suis, nec credere quivi hunc tantum tibi me discessu ferre dolore. Sister grado, te prospectu ne subtrahe nostrum, quem fugis. Extremum fado quod tad locor, hoc est. Tales Aeneas ardent et tormentuentem ledibat dictis animum lacrimas quieta. Illa solo fixos oculos a versa tenebat, nec magis incepto vultum sermonem ovetur, quam si durus silens aut stet mar pensia tanens. Tandem corribuit sese, atqui inimica refugit in nemus umbrifam. Conjux ubi pristinus illi respondet curis, aequatque sicais amore. Nec minus Aeneas casu concussus iniquo prosequitur lacrimis longe et miseratum.